Hello there, I'm Barb Owen of Barb Owen Designs, and today's class is all about scissors and all the things you can do with scissors and what scissors you want to have in your craft room and your sewing room. So we're going to start out with, I'm going to show you the soup to nuts version of scissors. So let me show you this. We're going to deal with scissors that range in size from one that won't even fit inside. It is almost capable of fitting inside the handle of this other one, and clear up to the Mamba Jamba size scissors that's so big it can't even fit on the screen. And we're just going to cover all kinds of scissors in between those two sizes. Look at how big this is. That is a serious pair of scissors right there. These are so big and heavy that I would never use these for anything. Although, you know what? If I had an occasion, I'd figure out how to make them work. Okay, so let's get started. Quit being silly and get with the program. I'm going to show you my favorite pair of scissors to have in the art and craft area of my studio, and this is the Tim Holtz, get the cover off of it here, the Tim Holtz Tonic scissors. So you can see the name right here, and Tonic is the company that creates them. Tim Holtz was the guy that designed the scissor. The thing that's nice about this scissor is it's got nice big handles, so they accommodate your hand very easily. They work really well. You don't have much hand fatigue when you're using these, and they are sharp. This has a serrated edge, and you can see that right here. It has a serrated edge. It cuts lots of stuff very easily. It cuts everything from fabric to lightweight, light gauge, small gauge wire, chipboard, cardboard, pardon me, all kinds of things. It is just a really great pair of scissors. If I had to only have maybe 3 pairs of scissors that I owned, this would definitely make the top of the list of scissors I would have to have. So the Tim Holtz Tonic scissors is a must-have. They are worth every penny that you pay for them. So I would definitely have these. The other thing that's nice about this is the blade is non-stick, and so if you're cutting tape or any kind of adhesive backed paper or cardstock or what have you, it will cut that, and the blades don't stick, unless they get kind of gunked up, and I'm going to show you how to clean them. But for the most part, they are truly a non-stick scissor, and I really, really highly recommend those. Also, in your sewing or craft area, you might start out with scissors in your sewing room. Like this is a Fisker's 8.5 inch, I believe it's 8.5. I have a ruler here so we can measure. 8.5 inch shear. And these are a really great starting scissor. A lot of people have these in their sewing room to begin with until they possibly change to a more expensive scissor, but this is a great scissor for to get started sewing with. It's great to have for a long time. You can, however, nick the blades, and then they kind of need to get recycled into your art or craft center of your studio. So that's what this is. This is not an expensive pair of scissors. This is sort of a run-of-the-mill scissor that was available, or a shear. It's a vent handle, so it's a shear, and it has the big loop and the small loop in the handle. So that's what makes these shears as opposed to scissors. And so this was available in the craft section of the arts and crafts store, just in the kind of inexpensive craft section. These are not non-stick blades. They will nick. The blades will nick if you cut stuff, if you accidentally cut a pin or something like that. But they're nice to have, some scissors that you don't care too much about. You still want them to cut, but you don't care too much if something happens to them. So it's good to have scissors like that in your assortment of scissors also. Now, everybody needs in their arts and crafts area, you need to have some small scissors. Now you'll notice the difference in these compared to the other ones. They have the handles are in line with the blades, so this is a scissor, and the loops are the same size, or basically the same size. And so that causes these to be called scissors as opposed to a shear. And everybody needs to have scissors like this that are nice and sharp. And once again, these started out in my sewing room and then eventually got recycled into my art studio. So, but you need to have something that's nice and sharp so that you can cut threads or twine or detail cuts. You know, you're doing detail cuts with scissors or with paper and, you know, corners and stuff like that. So you always need to have good sharp scissors in your studio. So they may have started out in the sewing room, but they ended up in your art area. These scissors are really fun. These are called paper shapers, and the paper shapers that you see today may have a little bit different look than this. They've been redesigned, but these are the ones that I have, and so I decided to show them to you. And these are paper edging scissors, and so this particular one is a scallop, and the cool thing about these is that they show you what design they cut on the handle, and it depends on which way you look at it as to which design you're going to see, because the nice thing about these is you're going to be able to cut in whatever way is comfortable for you. Now, I'm not left-handed. These cut very well right-handed. I'm not left-handed, and so I can't tell you how well they cut for a left-handed person. Having said that, if you turn them one way and cut with them like so, and you want to line up your blades as you cut, and don't cut all the way to the end of blades like this. You just cut a couple of scallops and then reposition your blades. Then you can get this perfect, you get the perfect scallop, an unending pattern all the way across. If you turn the scissors, so I was cutting this way. Okay, so I was cutting this way. If I flip the scissor around, I can cut the opposite way. Instead of getting the outward curve, I can get the inward curve like this. And that is a really nice feature of these little scissors. And so I think these are nice. These are nice little scissors to have, and they're not expensive. That's another thing that's nice about them, when you can get tools to have that aren't expensive. This is another one of the paper shapers. Again, it has the design printed on the handle or on the blade, just like that. This is the pattern that it cuts. It's another scallop shape, but it's got a little edge on the scallop, so it's kind of a zigzag edge on the scallop. So that's that one. And this is a paper shaper, so it works the same way. You can cut it one way or the other way. So depending on if you want to edge the paper with the scallop going, you want to edge the paper and you want your scallop going like this, you cut one way. If you want to cut the with the scallop going a different direction, you want it to scallop inward, you just turn the scissor over. Again, don't cut all the way to the end of these scissors. These are not a high precision scissor, and so you've got to kind of work with them. But you can turn them over, and this time if you wanted to edge the scissor with this, or edge the paper with the scallop going inward, you can do that as well. So whatever's comfortable to you, that is a nice thing about these scissors, that it allows you to be comfortable. This one is this wavy blade or wavy pattern, and that's what you see here, so it waves. So on this one, it doesn't make any difference which way you cut it, because it's going to give you the same design either way you cut. But if you line them up properly, which I didn't right here, you can see that this is not lined up exactly right. I cut too far when I was cutting this one side, so you can see if you don't line it up exactly right, you get a divot that doesn't look so cool. But you could line it up perfectly and you get a really nice wavy edged border. This is another one of the paper shapers. These tend to come in a set. This one is the same as the other one, except that the wave is the scallop. It's not a scallop, it's a wave. The wave pattern is smaller than on the one I just showed you. So this is the first one, this is the second one. So it's a nice pattern. And this is also a paper shaper. And this one is a teeny tiny little zigzag. I mean, that is one tiny little zigzag. It's a little tiny scallop. You'd think I could tell you what it was, wouldn't you? And I can't. It is a tiny little scallop. So again, you don't cut all the way to the edge or the end of the blade. And you get this great little scallop pattern. If you turn the scissors over, so that was cutting this way, if I flip the scissors over and cut, then I can get this edge on the edge of the paper easily and comfortably. For me, that works. It works well. Now, these are paper edgers that are made by the company Fiskars. And these are well known. They've been around for a long time. These are honestly a little higher quality scissor than the last ones I showed you. But they still don't like to cut, you know, stuff that's very heavy. They're not great for fabric or anything like that. They're great for paper and cardstock. Now, this has a different handle structure. So they are intended to be used with your fingers through the loop and your thumb through the smaller loop. And it cuts the design. They cut a little more easily than the last ones that I showed you. You still don't want to cut all the way to the end like I just did. You really want to cut just shy of the end of the pattern so you can line it up. And it makes a very nice design on the edge of the paper. So that's that one. Here's another one. So this is this design, kind of a decal edge. And you can see, again, same handle design. And here's the edge, the cut that it makes. So that's a decal edge. Here's a variation kind of between the two that I just showed you. This is kind of a combination of these two kind of put together. If you put these two designs together, you're going to come up with this one. Kind of a cross between the two. And so you end up with a really nice, again, it's a nice design. And if you line it up properly, you can just get one continuous design that's really lovely. Really nice design. And then, of course, they have a scallop edger as well. It's a little, quite a heavier scallop design than the paper edger scallop. So I'll show you the two of those side by side so you can see those. So this is the Fiskars scallop scissor scallop paper edger, and this is the paper shaper scallop edger. Paper shaper scallop edger. That is a mouthful. Like I said, these are really nice. They're great for paper, and this is cardstock that I've shown the samples in, and it cut it just fine. The main thing you want to remember with these is don't cut all the way to the end of the pattern. That's the main thing. All right, some other things that you might want to have in your art or craft studio. This is a specialty pair of scissors, and this one is made by the company Ginger. See if I can get that to show up. There it is right there. You can almost make it out, but it's Ginger, and this is a leather scissor, and this is a wonderful pair of scissors. It's It's about an 8.5 inch shear. It's not a bent handle shear though. It does have the big loop and the small loop for your hand and for your fingers and your thumb, but it is not a bent handle. And this is a really nice pair of scissors. This is great for cutting leather or things that are fairly heavy. And because this is from the company Ginger, you want to really take care of these. These are not inexpensive, but they are wonderful scissors. So if you're doing a lot of leather work or suede, heavy suede kind of fabrics that you're working with, you might want to have a pair of those. This is an interesting scissor. These came out a few years ago, and these will literally cut about anything. They're a funny looking scissor, and I don't even know what they're called, but they were very popular. They sold them on television a few years ago. Then they came out in all the stores. It's got a funny angle to it, so it gives you some leverage, and it really does cut. It lives up to its reputation. It cuts a lot of stuff. So if there's anything I want to cut and I don't want a chance ruining my scissors, my good scissors, I'll get this one out. And usually it'll cut it. It's always a good idea to just have some just kind of, yucky scissors hanging around, and then you can just, cut the stuff that you don't want to use your good scissors on. This is a barber scissor that has this little loop on the finger. It's like an extension of the finger hole. And these are nice because you can get some long sweeping cuts with these. So although I don't use them to cut hair with, they're really nice to have for certain applications. I guess the moral of the story here is there's scissors for every kind of thing you want to cut, and it doesn't hurt to have a bunch of pairs of scissors on hand. These are called kitchen shears. This pair has been well used and pretty much kind of abused. You can see by the rusty blades on it. But these are nice because, again, and you can see it's been dropped and the point's been broken off of it. But these are really sturdy old scissors, and boy, they can cut some stuff. And same thing on these. I think these are both by the same company. But anyway, I'm not sure. But they came with the yellow and the red handles, and they're just a really nice, good old scissor. This is also called a kitchen scissor. The thing that's nice about this one is that the blades come apart, so you could actually clean them easily. But they come apart. This particular pair comes apart so easily that sometimes when you're cutting with them, if you're not careful, you can actually jiggle them apart, and which is kind of annoying. So, but the good part is you can take them apart and clean them. So if you get some stuff on the handles, some adhesive or something on those, from a sticky label or something like that, you can actually take them apart and clean them, which is great. Makes it easy. And then, of course, sometimes you just have to have that odd duck pair of scissors just because they're just fun to have, and you might just want to have just a funny pair of scissors. So that's what those are. So now that's kind of my, those are kind of the scissors that I would have kind of in my craft room, my art studio. So I've got things that will cut pretty much anything that I want to cut. If there is something that's kind of heavy, I've got scissors for it. If there's something that's super duper heavy, I'll use this Mamba Jamba pair of scissors. If it's something that I need some precision cutting, do some precision cutting, or something that's fairly fine, I'll go down to these little guys. If I want to just edge paper, I'll use the paper shapers or the Fiskars paper shapers or paper edgers or the paper shapers. But remember that this is the Tim Holtz scissor is the one, the red-handled non-stick blade with the serrated blade. This is the one that you really, really I could not do without that in my art area of my studio. So what we're going to talk about now is the things that I would have in the cutting area of my sewing room. So we're going to take a look at those. And that starts over here. So I'm going to pull a couple of these over so we can start looking at those. Now you'll hear a little bell ringing here. And this little bell ringing is actually called a scissor bell. And although you don't have to have scissor bells on your scissors, they're kind of cool to have. You can do the same exact thing as the scissor bell with a piece of fabric or a piece of ribbon. And all those are just identifiers, so that if you're out someplace and you are you know, in a workshop or something, you'll have an identifier for your scissors. And the nice part about the scissor bell is when I'm out teaching a workshop or a class, I know if somebody's grabbed my scissors because the scissor bell is on them. So there, although the scissor bell may be a little annoying here for a moment, we're going to talk about this shear. This is my go-to cutting shear for fabric, and no one touches these scissors, these shears. No one touches these. No one touches these unless they're cutting fabric, and it's got to be a decent fabric. These do not cut junk. And this particular shear is an 8. It's about an 8 1/4 or almost 8 1/2. I think it's considered an 8 1/2 inch. Or an 8 inch. I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly what the exact size is, but it's the biggest of the Ginger shears. And these are super sharp. They are wonderful scissors. There is nothing like a Ginger shear for cutting fabric. Nothing. And they come with a cover, blade cover, and I always keep that on them. If the scissor comes with a cover, I always keep those blades covered, and I will take the cover off, do the cutting, put the cover back on. That is one way you protect your scissors and your shears, and you don't have this kind of thing happen where you bust the tip off of them. Now these shears can be sharpened. You got to find somebody that really knows what they're doing, and you can have them sharpened, and you can have them sharpened a number of times. Truthfully, I don't do a lot with sharpening scissors and shears. I use them as long as possible. I take really good care of them, and then when they don't cut the way I want them to cut, then they get recycled into the art studio. But you can have them sharpened, but just you got to have somebody that really knows what they're doing. There is another shear made by the same company that I keep in my sewing area, and that is this one. And you can see the difference in size between these two. There's not a lot of difference in length, but there is some. There's about an inch difference. And this is also a shear. This is a more comfortable shear to use for just standard, kind of normal tasks of cutting. This one, however, is the big one is the one you want to use if you're cutting out patterns, if you're sewing clothing and so forth. You want to use this one to cut because you get a better, longer, smoother cut just because it is longer, and it will take a longer bite out of the fabric. This one I use if I'm if I'm doing a quilting project or a fiber arts project. I will use this one because it's shorter, it's easier to use, and you can just cut shorter distances, and usually it's less stress on your hand. So I use this smaller, shorter blade scissor anytime that I can. And this one is a 7 inch. So it's about an inch difference between the two. So those are shears. And then this is a scissor also made by the Ginger company. Let's see if you can catch the light here where you can see it says Ginger. And this is a scissor, and I think this one is a 5 inch scissor. Yep, this is a 5 inch scissor. And this one I use a lot. I have 2 pairs of these because I nicked one of the blades, and so I have 2 pairs of these. And in this case, the fiber that I've tied around the handle signifies that this one I cut paper with, and the other one I don't. And this is just, these are super sharp. These are an excellent scissor to use if you're into tailoring. It will cut through. They're so strong. The blades are strong. They'll cut and notch things when you're tailoring. They're just a wonderful in-between size of scissor. They're bigger than the little guys, like, sorry, reaching over here. This is bigger and stronger than this little pair of scissors that I will use next to my sewing table and then next to my sewing machine. So this is longer and much stronger, and you can tell by the size of the blades. This is a great one though to use for lots of your sewing needs. This is a great one for clipping threads and using around your sewing machine. But again, it comes with its little sheath, and I keep these blades covered because it just helps to protect them. Even this little one comes with a sheath, and I do the same thing. I keep them covered so that it protects the points. The points are so important on a scissor because, especially on these that you make an investment in, you want it to cut all the way to the tip, clear to the point. And that means you've got to protect those points. So just keep them as protected and covered as possible. This is another one of the Ginger scissors. This is the curved embroidery scissor. When you first look at this, it looks pretty much like this one. But when you look at it from the side, you can see that the tips curve up. Okay, the tip out here curves up. Let's see if I can show them to you this way. You see that? The one on the bottom is the straight blade, and the one on the top is the curved tip. Now, why would you use the curved tip scissor? Why would you need to have both, for heaven's sakes, right? That's the question. The reason that you want to have both is there are times when you are wanting to clip on the surface of something. And by having this blade curved, you can get down there and you can clip a thread, especially if you're doing embroidery. If you're machine embroidering, there's lots of clipping of threads. And you're working over a hoop that has hooped your embroidery. This allows you to get over that hoop, maneuver over it, get down close to the fabric, and snip those threads. When you have the straight blade scissor, when you come down like this, it's just really easy to get down there and snip the fabric, not just the thread. So that is why you want to have that little curved scissor, especially if you're doing machine embroidery. And it's appropriate for lots of other things. If you're doing free motion embroidery at your machine, not just have an embroidery attachment for your machine, they're nice for that as well. Some other small scissors that are just kind of nice to have around if you have access to them. This is another curved tip scissor. This is another one you could use in place of the one I just showed you. The blades are quite short in comparison to the Ginger blade. They have a much longer blade as opposed to this one. Still a very nice little pair of scissors, uber sharp. This one has a rounded point on it, and so again, that is a nice little scissor to have. This one even has a little divot in it so you can get under a thread and clip it off, but you don't have the pointed tips on it, so you're not so likely to gouge into your fabric. Then there are the scissors that catch those of us who like scissors, and this would be one of those. These are called church scissors. I don't know that that's the real name for them. This is by the company Dovo, D-O-V-O, This is a really high quality scissor. They're called church scissors because they kind of look like a church steeple. And these are beautiful, sharp. They're just gorgeous, beautiful scissors. A friend of mine gave these to me as a gift, and I can truthfully tell you I have never cut anything with them because I prize them. I think they're just beautiful little scissors, and so I just keep them because I'm not ready to break them in yet. But that's the truth. This is not an expensive pair of scissors, and this was another little short bladed pair of scissors that I keep around my sewing machine. You can tell the difference. There's a difference in length between these two. This one, I mean, this is not an expensive scissor. This tends to be a little more of an investment with the Ginger scissor. So I keep this one most of the time around my sewing machine. And this one kind of lives in my sewing kit where I carry it around with me and when I'm doing hand sewing. But this is a nice little scissor. It was not expensive. It was maybe $8 for this little pair of scissors. It's great to use, and I use it a lot. So speaking of small scissors to use around your sewing machine, you can also get scissors that are shaped, that are fancy little scissors. This is a little stork, right? Again, it's a small scissor, nice to use around your machine. This was a scissor that, again, it's one of those fancy scissors that's just a novelty and fun to have. So this came from someone, again, who sent them as a gift, but you got to say, it's pretty cute. And, you know, they cut pretty well, but I have to say, I don't use them because it's kind of like see, there's the back. It's kind of like the church scissors. They just kind of have a special place where they live all by themselves. Sometimes you just collect things, you know. If you prefer to have at your sewing machine a thread snip, there are a number of those available on the market. So these work this way. You just pinch them so you don't have to open and close them. You just pinch them. They're open at all times. That's the good news and the bad news, because if they're open all the time, you can actually drop them off things and break the blades, although the blades are replaceable. But of course you have to go to the trouble of doing that. And then this kind of same thing, thread clips, thread snips. They work on a tension spring, and they work very nicely. And if you like this kind of thing, they're great, and I use them from time to time. Okay, let's talk about a couple of other kinds of specialty scissors. This one works along the same line as the little tiny ones I just showed you. And these are big enough I need to show you in a different angle. This is by the company Fiskars, and this is the Soft Touch Micro Tip Spring Action. And this is a shear. And the way this works, it has a blade release here. So it's a spring action, you can see that. And the way this works is you squeeze the handles, and the spring action, you don't have to actually physically maneuver the scissors open and closed. You only have to squeeze them closed like that. And then they automatically spring back open because of the spring that is right inside there. Hence the name Spring Action. And these are very nice. A lot of people really like these if they suffer hand fatigue. This is a nice scissor to use, and because the handle is bent, you can use these to cut out patterns for your if you're cutting out a sewing pattern, works very well for that. So you have that kind of scissor. They also make a small version of this that's a straight bladed scissor instead of the bent handle scissor, and they're really nice as well. They're also a spring action, so a lot of people have those for doing things with quilting and so forth. This one is known as a rag quilter snip, and again, it has the spring action in the handle, so it's it springs open. All you have to do is squeeze it closed. And because of the way this blade is engineered, and being short like this is made for cutting those rag quilts and edgings on things. And it's very, it's got a lot of power in those blades. A lot of power. The way that it's engineered, it's a good sturdy scissor. Now there are some other scissors that have some real specialized use in the sewing room, and here are several of them. This is an applique scissor. So this is an applique scissor, and it's sometimes known as a duckbill scissor. And so this works. It's also a bent handle, and this scissor, you can also get a scissor like this that doesn't have that duckbill. And but you can see it has this bent handle right here. It has the bent handle. So this is also, the one without the duckbill is also very good for using around your embroidery machine to work over the hoop to snip threads and so forth. The actual purpose of this one though is to cut appliques to cut around an applique without cutting the fabric, the ground fabric. And it works really quite well for that. And the width of this blade is what protects the fabric that's underneath. This one did not come with a sheath to protect these blades, and this is such a nice sharp scissor that just as a rule I slip it right back into its little plastic bag that it came in, and that is where I have it live, so that I protect those points as much as I possibly can. So applique scissor, I highly recommend that applique scissor. This scissor is a pinking shear, and it is made by the company Fiskars. And Fiskars traditionally uses an orange handle for a lot of their scissors. I believe they still do. But this is a pinking shear, so it has a zigzag blade. You can see the zigzag edge. And what this does is it puts a zigzag edge on the edge of your fabric. And so by doing that, it cuts little bias edges, little tiny bias edges. The bias edge of fabric doesn't ravel, or it ravels very little. And so by putting this little tiny micro bias edge on a seam, it prevents the raveling. So that's how that works. Typically, I use these more for decoration than I do for actually doing the edge treatment on seams to prevent raveling. But I do use these a lot to create edges on things, decorative edges on things on fabric, because these decorative paper edgers really don't work on fabric at all. So you have to have scissors that are specifically designed to cut on fabric. Now, these can be sharpened also, but you have to really find somebody that knows what they're doing to sharpen a pinking shear, because they're not easy to sharpen. So they can be sharpened, but you really have to find somebody that knows what they're doing. This scissor is, I keep saying, this is one of my favorites, but it's true. You know, if I didn't love scissors, I wouldn't have all these kinds of scissors, would I? This is called a scalloping shear. So this is similar to this one. This is similar to this paper edger. And you can see it makes almost the same shape scallop. But this one, because it is engineered for fabric, will put a great edge on fabric. You can use it on paper too, but it's recommended. I would recommend that you use this just on fabric and you get a paper edger to use to put your edges on your paper. This is made by the company Wiss. It is a scalloping shear, 7.5 inch scalloping shear. It's interesting how they spelled the word scalloping. It works great for non-woven fabric, to edge non-woven fabric, such as felt, ultra suede, and things like that. That's what I use these for the most. And again, because this was an expensive pair of shears, I keep them inside their little plastic because it just protects them. Or if you have somebody that's real handy, or if you can make nice protective pouches for your scissors, for these specialty scissors, that's a great idea also. This one is a scissor that I've had for a really, really, really long time. And this one is, I'm just showing this to you because I think it's a novelty and it's kind of fun. This came from the Singer Company. Let's see if we can get, there it is, the Singer Company right there on the blade, right here. And this is a buttonhole scissor. And this screw adjusts and determines how far this is going to cut. So the more the screw screws into the handle, the less room this has to cut out here with the blades. And conversely, the less that this is screwed in, the further that's going to cut. So the theory is this goes into the buttonhole, the point goes into the end of the buttonhole. So we'll pretend, well, we'll have to do it on this end because the other end I've cut. Okay, so that, pretending that this is a buttonhole right here, and I don't have anything to draw with. Yes, I do. Just get a marker, and then we'll just make a pretend buttonhole. So let's say that's where the buttonhole is, and that's where the buttonhole begins and ends. So the theory is you would insert the point of the blade into the end of the buttonhole, just past the ending threads, and that you would cut down. This is on your practice buttonhole. So you would cut down as far as it's going to cut, and then you would adjust the screw accordingly so that is the exact depth or distance, and then the next time you could just put it in and cut. Put it in and cut. Put it in and cut. And it's going to cut exactly the same length opening in the buttonholes. So that's the theory. Well, that's fine as long as this little screw doesn't get moved at all. It's fine. But this screw moves pretty easily. And then the next thing you know, you're cutting past the end of your buttonhole, and the whole thing gets very disheartening. Still a fun little pair of scissors, but that's what it's for. It is a buttonhole cutter pair of scissors. Now, that's kind of the story. That's the story on scissors. Now, is that all the scissors there are known to man? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. There are tons of pairs of scissors, but that just gives you some of the kinds of scissors that we have, that are available, and that you might want to have and might consider in your craft and sewing area. If I had to narrow it down to 5 pairs of scissors, I'm going to have a good pair of bent handled sewing shear. This is the Ginger 8-inch, 8.5 inch. I forgot which one it is. I would have that one. I would have a good scissor to use in my sewing room. So this is the 5-inch scissor. I would have a little tiny pair of scissors. Looking for my favorite ones. I would probably, if I could only have one, I would probably have the Ginger little guy 4-inch scissors. So that's 3. And then in my craft and art area, I would definitely have the Tim Holtz tonic scissor because it cuts so much stuff. So that's 4. And let's see, what else would I have for my 5th choice? I think I would probably have to pick one of the edger scissors, and I probably would select the pinking shear. If I could only have 5 pairs of scissors, I think that would be the 5 that I would have. And because that way I could do some decorative things, but I would also have quality cutting instruments and So you really don't have to have just a whole ton of scissors in your sewing and art area. But, you know, can you ever have too many pairs of scissors? It's like, can you have too many pens? Of course not. All right, let's talk about how to clean your scissors. If you get adhesive and gunk on your scissors, one of the good ways the first thing that I always try is rubbing alcohol. So that's the first thing I always try, whether you buy it in a bottle like this or whether you buy the alcohol wipes. You can use those. They're in little packets. You can use those. Oftentimes that's enough to clean the blades. If that doesn't do it, then you may want to go to something like this, which is contractor solvent. And this is a little stinky. Both of these are a little stinky. Anything that's a solvent-based product is going to be a little odorous, and so you're going to need to have it in a well-ventilated area. But you can use this contractor solvent on a soft rag, and usually if the alcohol doesn't dissolve it, usually the contractor solvent will dissolve whatever the adhesive is off the blades of your scissors. And then you want to have a clean section of the cloth where you want to clean those blades off. And then before you go to cutting something you really care about, you want to cut something else, you know, cut a scrap paper or scrap fabric or something, so you make sure that you get all the residue from these cleaning products off the blades of your scissors. And there also, one other thing I wanted to talk about is there are some sharpening devices that you can buy on the market, and I would kind of caution you about those. I would use your discretion with purchasing those and doing those, because if you mess up the blades on your scissors, then sometimes you can't get them back. Sometimes you can't fix them. But if it's a pair of scissors you don't care about and you want to play with it and see if you can get an edge back on them, then I would do that. But if you have a pair of scissors you really care about, I would take them to somebody that's a professional and allow them to do the sharpening work for you. Okay, I think that wraps up this class on scissors and how to choose a pair of scissors, how to buy a pair of scissors. Hopefully I've given you some ideas about that. There will be some class notes that will refresh and kind of summarize this class and refresh your memory about things we talked about here. You'll find those located beside the video. If you have questions, don't hesitate to contact me through email. My name is Barb Owen of Barb Owen Designs, and I'll see you again in the next class. Thanks for stopping by, and if you've enjoyed the class, I hope you'll tell a friend. So I'll see you again soon. Bye.